The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story.
Today is October 23rd, 2023. We are here with retired Lieutenant Colonel Greg Cooper, also known as Coop. He retired from the Army National Guard and also served in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he served for 40 years and 28 days, full-time. How you doing today, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Awesome. So let's start out with where you were from.
Well, I'm originally from Lansing. Grew up in the Baker Street, Island Avenue area, which was kind of a rough area at the time when I grew up there.
And where is that at in Lansing?
That would be about 10 minutes, 15 minutes from downtown Lansing to the south.
Okay.
By Potter Park area.
Yep, I know exactly where that is. And what year were you born?
I was born in 1962.
1962. So what high school would you have graduated from?
Well, that's a funny story. I never did graduate, but if I would have graduated, it would have been in 1981 from Lansing Everett.
Okay. And growing up, did you have any siblings?
Yes, I had a stepsister that was older than I was, didn't live with us. I had two half-sisters that did live with us, and then I had a brother that lived with us.
And were you competitive with them growing up?
Maybe for attention, okay. But with my brother, yes. But with my sisters, no.
And did you play any sports growing up?
Oh, I did. I played football. I played baseball until I hit junior high. Didn't do a whole lot in junior high. But in high school, I wrestled, played baseball.
Class?
132.
132. Would that be a medium size or lower weight?
I would say it'd probably be in the bottom third.
Okay.
If you will.
So you wrestled, and I'm sorry, what else were you going to say?
Nothing.
So you just wrestled in high school?
Correct.
Okay, and what did your parents do for a living?
Not a whole lot. I actually was a welfare kid. The father that I had was stepfather. Wasn't very motivated, I'll just say for lack of better words. My mother, very loving, did what she could, but I don't know what else to say about that. It wasn't the ideal family situation.
Well, you made a lot of it. I mean, you ended up retiring as a lieutenant colonel. Not very many people can reach that.
Correct.
So you definitely, learned from it and made your own way. So was there anybody in your family that served in the military?
Yes, my uncles. I had 4 uncles that served. One was a pilot. He died rather young in a plane crash. Then I had another uncle that was in telecommunications, another uncle that served over in Korea, and then another uncle that served in World War II.
So they were kind of the motivator for you, or made you kind of think of the military, or?
No, I always loved the military. Watching movies growing up. I don't know if they were necessarily a motivator. I think the person that motivated me the most in my life was my grandmother. I spent a lot of time living with her, just because of the dynamic of the household of where I was growing up.
Okay.
And she lived over by the School for the Blind, which was over on Maple Street.
In Lansing?
In Lansing.
Okay. And so she was a heavy influence on you growing up, and
Very much so.
So was your grandfather around at all, or just her?
No, he died when he was in his 50s. He came over from Cyprus, Greece on the boat. And my grandmother is from Germany. So he's Greek, she's German. And she ended up having to raise her 10 children in a 864 square foot house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's not very big.
There's something to be said to go outside and blow the stink off of me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they really took care of her, though, as they got older. So she had a lot of influence on me. As a matter of fact, I lived with her on and off until I was about 14 years old. And then I used to go over there quite often just to sit and just talk life with her.
Okay. So what year did you graduate high school?
Well, again, I didn't graduate.
Okay.
I would have graduated in 1981.
1981. And so how did you get your high school, like GED, or did you?
No, at the time, you didn't need a high school diploma to join the military.
Oh, okay.
Well, the Marine Corps, anyhow. I don't know about the Army. But, I wasn't a very good kid growing up. I had my challenges, and I did a lot of things that, kids growing up in the hood did. Mm-hmm. Then one day, a buddy of mine that I wrestled with said, "Hey, I signed you up to go in the Marine Corps with me as on the buddy system." And I was like, okay. Didn't really think much of it until it got real when the recruiters showed up. So I joined when I was 17. Had to have my parents sign off on it, which they did, of course. And finished going through school. After state wrestling finals were over, I wasn't going to graduate anyhow, so I left shortly thereafter in April for boot camp in 1980.
So did you ever get like a diploma or GED? Or
I did. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I just was out. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, I could do something better. So I did get my GED. And then I started dabbling with community courses. And from there, went to Michigan State and Davenport University, ended up getting my degree. And just recently, this last fall, I received my master's in procurement and acquisitions.
Congratulations.
So
you joined the Marines on a buddy system.
Correct.
And where did you go to basic training at?
MCRD, California.
Okay.
Marine Corps Recruit Depot.
And what year did you leave for basic training?
1980.
1980.
Yes.
And so you get to basic training. So you get to basic training, and what are your thoughts when you get to basic training? Tell me a little bit about that and how basic training went. Like how many weeks it was.
Basic training was 16 weeks long. You spent 3 weeks in reception. They kind of went over, hey, what you can expect was really a bunch of bullshit. But it's okay if I say bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you spent 3 weeks in basic training, and they just put you through the training. How to march, how to walk, when to eat, what to eat. And this was when they didn't have necessarily a timeout or a hands-off system. They were right up in your grill. Two of my drill instructors were Vietnam War veterans, and they definitely let you know where you stood.
8 years after Vietnam ended, right?
Right. Right around there, yes.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about discipline, about what it took to be a good person. They, in their own way, even though they were very hands-on physically, you made a mistake, you never knew what was coming. But they did. They showed you what it took to be successful, and it was probably one of the best experiences. It's actually what molded me into the person that I am today, I think. As far as discipline, as far as respect, as far as forward thinking, it was a God thing. I'm a very spiritual, religious person. I give all my success to the Lord Jesus Christ, and I will identify with a couple of situations that I think you'll be able to understand down the road. But they also taught you basics on how to live. They taught you how to iron, how to wash your clothes, just how to speak, and how to be a team. I think the team was the biggest thing, because growing up in the neighborhood that I did, the only teams that are around were the gangs. Mm-hmm. And if you weren't part of it, it wasn't a good thing. But the Marine Corps team is something that you definitely wanted to be on. So
absolutely,
it was a surprise. I didn't know what to expect when I got there.
So what kind of things, like when you say that they were hands-on, so like what kind of mistakes would they be more like hands-on? And like when you say hands-on, can you kind of describe that? And this isn't getting anyone into trouble, it's just trying to illustrate the difference between today and then. Well,
a couple of examples that stick out in my mind is there was this one Marine recruit that don't know how he got him, but he got a pack of cigarettes. And he lit up during the night, and one of the drill instructors saw him. So they got us all out of the rack at about 2 a.m, and they decided they were going to do some night ops with him in the whiskey locker. Now, the whiskey locker was a locker that was in front of the squad bay or the barracks, and it housed, like all of your cleaning supplies, extra linen.
Not whiskey.
Yeah, but I don't know why they called it the whiskey locker. I really don't, but that's what they called it. And they took him into the whiskey locker, and they go, we're going to do some night ops. And you heard a bunch of banging going on in there, and he came out, and he didn't look too good. And then they put us all back to bed, and they go, this is what's going to happen if you don't do what we tell you to do. And that was it. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he never lit up again.
No, not until it was authorized. And that authorization for smoking wasn't until the smoking lamp wasn't lit until probably the last 2 or 3 weeks of boot camp when you're getting ready to graduate. So then there was another example where they called him the pig private. He was overweight. They weren't politically correct, obviously. Swearing was a second language. But he had snuck a donut out of the mess hall. And they made him wash it down with water. But they made him wash it down with several canteens of water until he threw up on the floor, and then they made him sit in it and clean it up.
Wow.
So it was a big psychological thing, I think. And that probably stemmed from, Vietnam. I'm guessing, if you get captured by the enemy, you have the mental capacity not to break.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. That's just a theory that I have.
Yeah, and I would imagine like those guys coming from Vietnam are like, if you don't do what we tell you to do, or like what we're trying to train you to do, like you could literally get killed.
Exactly.
Or get someone else killed.
They still had that mindset, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's like...
And it was supported by the leadership all the way up.
That's good. That's good. I mean, definitely a huge difference in the way it is today. Last I heard, you can't they don't curse at basic training anymore.
Yes. And I don't necessarily know if cursing is the right thing either, but it gets your attention. I think that, we say things, and back then it was something to get your attention, something that you weren't used to. Well, I was used to it because of the neighborhood I grew up in.
Yeah.
But you could tell that there were Marine recruits that probably came from, a loving family that was like, hey, if somebody said, get your bleep, bleep, bleep over here now, they were like, whoa, it got their attention. So
yeah,
that was just their way of doing it.
Absolutely. And so you end up you go through basic training. That was a great story, by the way. So what happens after basic training? Where do you go next?
I went on leave, came home, and got back and did my. I was a 1371, which was a combat engineer.
Okay.
My first duty station was back at MCRD. Well, actually, Camp Pendleton. And we did a lot of training, a lot of demolition. Footbridges. We actually went out to 29 Palms, and they have a airstrip that's in 125-pound slats that you can take up. So we went out there and we broke down about a quarter mile of the airstrip. It took us about 3 weeks. You wash them off. You have your dozers come in, level off the airfield, and then you put it back together. And that's where I found the Lord Jesus Christ was out in a tent in the desert.
Tell me a little bit more about how that.
Well, I was struggling. My grandmother had always taken me to church, and
what kind of church was it?
It was Lutheran, so I did the whole catechism thing, and I could identify with, God at the time as far as His story, but I just didn't get that wow feeling. And I was kind of struggling. I wasn't doing real well with the unit that I was with. And, I wasn't used to being hazed. And it wasn't just me. It was the new guys. Mm-hmm. And I was struggling. And I was just like, did I make a mistake doing this? And so I went to the chaplain and I was like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And he's like, and then I went into my history as far as, how I grew up. And he goes, well, have you ever gotten into the scripture? Because it will guide you. Sometimes, you have to struggle before you can really see the big picture. And so we prayed together. And then the Holy Spirit just hit me. And it's nothing like you can ever experience unless you've experienced it. It was incredible. And so I've been a Christian ever since. Try to hold true to, the Lord's values, and that's just a great experience, I guess. So, maybe that's where God needed me to be at the time in order for me to come to Him. I don't know. We all have a plan, right?
Yep.
We don't know what it is.
Absolutely. I've look at the book of Paul, and read some of his stories, or Saul, whichever one you want to say. But, going through a hard time, you read something like that. And how long was he in prison for? 11 years?
Right. That's what God needed him to be to, minister to the to the prisoners.
Yeah.
You know, if you just bring one person to God, I mean, that's incredible. It's kind of like that cold call. You know, for every 10 you cold call on, you get 3. Well, 3 is better than nothing.
Absolutely. So you found Christ, Jesus Christ, and then what transpired after that? Like where did you go next? What are some of the things you did after that?
Well, you know, once I experienced that, things just automatically changed. I started getting attention by the leadership. I was more motivated to do things. And I ended up getting meritoriously promoted during that stint with the 7th Engineers over at Camp Pendleton.
What did you get promoted to?
PFC.
PFC.
It was ahead of my grade, but and then I got promoted ahead of my time as a Lance Corporal as well. So once my stint was done,
and how long was your stint?
2 years.
2 years.
And then I went into the reserve. It was a 2x4, and at the time, as far as I remember, I spent time at the 6th Engineers over in Battle Creek in the reserve, which was a bridging unit. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was a young kid. I was still just, you know, not even 20, you know, close to 20. Yeah, you know. So, you know, being that young age, you know, I mean, transportation's an issue, you know, living in Lansing. So I transferred over to the to Charlie company that's in this building here. But they were over at where the 119th is, over on Saginaw Street when I was there.
Okay. We're at on Saginaw Street?
It's right across from the old Field Artillery Unit and the Army Reserve, which sits next to the Red Cross. So it's right by Catholic Central.
Yep.
The Quonset hut
used to be
structure by the 119th.
Okay. Is the 119th there again?
No, the 119th, they redid that building.
Gallery. It was, I forget the owner of it. My sister-in-law used to work there.
Gillespie Group, I think.
Group, there you go.
Yes. They bought that. They were going to tear it down. And they bought it, and now it's just a business building. But it's a beautiful building.
Absolutely.
You know.
I went in there like 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
So
it was all redone, you're right.
Yeah, if you go down Marshall Street right there, heading north, the Marine Corps Reserve Unit was on the left-hand side there, right on the corner of Saginaw and Marshall.
Yep. And it's
on the west side.
Kind of looks like a hut.
Yeah, it's a Quonset hut, is what they call them.
Yeah. So you're there and you're living in Lansing. So you're doing your 1 week in a month, and what are you doing outside of that 1 week in a month?
I'm just working, you know, whatever I can. You know, during junior high, they had co-op, you know, so I worked in some restaurants, and just kind of had a knack for the restaurant business. So I kind of stayed in that area, which I was comfortable in. Did some bartending, you know, waiting tables, cooking, you know, just the basics, you know. During that time, I was going to college.
Where were you attending at?
I was attending Lansing Community at the time.
Downtown Lansing?
Correct.
And what were you going to school for?
Whatever. You know, it was just the basics. I was looking at maybe law enforcement at the time. I actually ended up going into theater and dance, if you can believe that shit. I thought it would be a good way to pick up girls, but I ended up really kind of enjoying it. You know, it was a good release for me, a way to express myself, you know, without, you know, offending others, I guess, for lack of better terms. But so I did that for a while.
Were there any plays that you were in?
Yeah.
What plays were you in?
None of your business.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. There was it was called Hot Feet. There was another one that was called Jazz About. There was another one called Deja Vu. Actually, not the strip club, but it was a Deja Vu. It was a modern dance recital called the Repertoire to Mirrors. I don't know what the hell that meant, but it was a good time. It was fun.
What were your roles in those?
And we also did Grease.
Grease. So who were you in Grease?
I think it was Danny.
Danny?
Yeah.
I can see you as Danny.
And then we did.
It's a compliment, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Then we did. What was it? There was another one, and I can't remember what it was, but it was on TV. I wasn't in the movie that was on TV, but we did that one. And then the other ones were just dancing. So.
What? That's awesome. I never would have.
Not many people know this either.
Yeah.
You know, I took jazz, ballet, modern, tried tap, but my feet just didn't move quick enough.
So you're going to school, you're doing some theater, you're doing your 1 week in a month, and when does that transfer into the Guard?
Well, you know, it got to the point where I was getting close to an associate's degree, and the Marine Corps, you know, they came to me and they were like, hey, you know, I'm sure recruiting was an issue there. So they're looking at their people that had kind of gotten out afterwards, and they wanted me to come back. And it was like I was really missing it. I was missing the camaraderie. I was missing just the different experiences that the military provides for you.
Mm-hmm.
And but they wanted me to come back full time, and I just wasn't ready for that. You know, I was looking to maybe start a family, you know, somewhere down the road, and I just didn't feel like the military would accommodate that at that time in my life. So I was talking to one of my cousins, which was and this was down the line, but he was just getting ready to go to Desert Storm. He was a company commander at the time with the 1776th, I want to say, when they were in
MP?
Yeah, MP.
Okay.
But that was when they were, I want to say, over in the Wasso area.
Yeah, I remember that.
For some reason. And so he was talking to me about that. And then when he got back, he got promoted to battalion commander of the 163rd PSD, Personnel Service Detachment. And then I saw him at a family gathering, and he's like, are you still interested in maybe coming to the Guard? And, well, my stepdad was in the Guard, and, you know, basically didn't succeed, I guess, for lack of better words, trying to be nice here. Mm-hmm. And the only experiences that I had when we would come up to Grayling was a drunken brawl, you know. And I was like, you know, Bill, I know that you're a great guy, but, you know, Guard's a bunch of dirtbags. I don't want to be a part of them. He's like, well, if you don't, that's fine. So I had kind of left it at that. Well, about 6 months later, I met my wife. My wife now. And we moved in together. As a matter of fact, I proposed to her. I was supposed to be with somebody else that night, but I ended up meeting her. Ended up proposing to her on television. One of my friends was managing the Fox 47 station on St. Joe there. went in and did a taping. And they put it on during the Michigan State basketball game halftime report. And so I proposed to her that way. She said yes. So I just wanted to fit that in there.
Yeah. How did you guys meet?
Well, I was working at the time as the manager for the Dispatch. And it's a shop bar that's right across from where the Michigan Princess is on the Grand River there.
Yeah.
Supposed to go out with another girl and another couple. And my boss, said, sorry, I can't let you go. Even though he had told me he could. So I was like, this is bullshit. I've been working for you for like 3 years. Never asked for a day off. I've been working, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And you told me I could have it off, and now you're saying you can't. I said, that's bullshit. So at the last minute, he kind of came around. He said, you're right. It is bullshit. Go ahead, take it off. And so I called the girl, and she's like, made other plans. Sorry. And I was like, okay. So we still went out with the couple, and we ended up out at was it the Midway over on Saginaw Street? It was a bar in a hotel area there, and I just saw her across the bar, and I was like, I'm just going to ask her to dance. And I went over there, and she had been turning down a lot of guys. And I said, listen, I just want to dance. I'm not trying to pick you up, not trying to take you home. I just want to dance. What do you think? She's like, all right. So we danced, and the rest is kind of history,
What do you remember? What song it was?
I don't, but I do know what our wedding song is.
What was your wedding song?
Luther Vandross, Here and Now.
It's a good song.
It is a good song.
Yeah.
It is a good song. But, yeah, so, yeah, it was kind of a God thing, because I had been praying to him, hey, lead me, guide me, I want to be with, someone that I can share myself with. And there she was.
He kept you at work, and you had to lost the other date to meet her. So
Yep.
He works in mysterious ways.
Yes, he does.
So you meet your wife, and how does that change your course as far as military?
She changed my life. I mean, I was, even though I was a Christian, I was still heading down some wrong paths.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say I liked girls a lot. And, that just all changed when I met her. I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to be more reliable. I wanted to be somebody that people would listen to because they wanted to, not because they thought they had to. And she humbled me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of molded me in her own way to be the person that I am. Excuse me. So, and she's part of the reason why we're here today. And what I mean by that is Bill had called me about 6 months or so after that, when I had met her, and said, hey, we've got some things going on if you're interested. I know that you said you weren't interested, but, I'd really think that you should give it a shot. And I said, well, I'll think about it. And so I went back to our apartment, and I was talking to Lisa, and, I said, Bill threw this out there. What do you think? And she's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, I think that the National Guard's a bunch of dirtbags from the experiences that I've seen. And she goes, okay, so what's stopping you from going in? I go, well, that, I want to be with somebody that I respect. And she goes, well, if you think they're a bunch of dirtbags, why don't you join and make a difference? Change it. She said, instead of, whining about it, do something about it. So I joined my cousin's unit and told him, I wanted to do something bigger than me. I wanted to do something more than, I was an NCO at the time, but, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so he said, well, the Army or the National Guard has a OCS program. So I joined MMA at the time, which also at the time was exclusively Michigan, where you had tax sergeants from the Ranger unit that I think was in Pontiac at the time. And not that they were hands off or not that they were hands on, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of a Marine Corps boot camp, just about how they were up in their grill and how they would smoke you all day long until they got their point across.
Smoking meaning doing push-ups.
Oh, whatever they wanted you to do. Yep. Yeah. So
you end up joining OCS or?
Yes.
Okay.
Went through OCS and commissioned in 1995.
1995. So,
yes.
So your break in service was how long?
Well, break in service was about 2 years, but I was still in the Ready Reserve in the Marine Corps at the time.
Okay.
So, and I had a requirement, just like we do when we put somebody into the ING, I had a requirement to muster, every year. And then, of course, I was taking some correspondence courses to build whatever I could as far as points and opportunities in case I went back into the Marine Corps that would apply to promotions and stuff like that. So I was still kind of going in, maybe once a month just to, use computers or do whatever because I kind of missed it. So.
Yep. I know what you mean. So 1995 comes around, you get commissioned, and what happens next?
Let me make sure I've got that right. 1995. Yeah, 1995. Okay. What comes next? Well, I applied to the, you had an opportunity to, branch whatever you wanted, but you had to apply for it. So I applied to the 182nd.
Which is artillery.
Yep, in Detroit with then Captain Henry Cason, and was accepted as a second lieutenant. So,
where was that? I remember there was one in Lansing.
Well, there was. That was Charlie Battery.
Okay.
They used to be in the old horse barn behind the 119th Field Artillery. Yeah. They
Dave
tore
Hackworth,
that down.
Right?
Yep, Dave Hackworth
was there. Yep. Yeah, I remember.
And there was a Sergeant First Class Noble as well that was there. And Gus Gorzinski was the commander at the time.
He was a Fort Custer commander
as well. Yep.
Yeah, at one point.
I worked for him as his deputy and as the range officer when he was there as the commander. And so my first assignment as an officer was with Bravo Battery in Bay City. They were just transferring or converting that unit from engineers to MLRS. And I was the only officer in the whole battery. So I was technically the commander at the time.
Mm-hmm. Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. And I think that the enlisted experience that I had kind of helped me be a little more successful than what new lieutenants are coming out as, because I know what I didn't like about officers at the time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And having, 6 years of that constant interaction as a Marine and as an NCO at the time, those experiences just helped me kind of identify with the soldiers, and just helped me. You knew when to break track with them and when to back off and let them just be soldiers. So
Very important.
I had a great first sergeant that definitely let me know that's the way that it should be. I can't remember his name, but he definitely was old school, I guess, for lack of better terms. So
your multi-launch rocket system.
Multiple, yep.
Do you remember what type of equipment that specifically would be?
M238, M268. All I know is that you could stabilize it and fire 12 rockets within 60 seconds.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Do those things take out a grid square?
Yes.
Okay.
They can. So, yeah, it was an awesome experience.
I bet.
Right out of the gate. Something I was looking for. And then after that, we got a commander, and I became the XO. And then we got an XO, and I became a platoon leader, which was fine, because I got more experience with the launcher and how to sustain it and what that logistical tail looked like, and those experiences that you need if you're going to move up, like positioning and where to put the launcher when you're doing a reload, because those booms go up so high. You still want cover, but you don't want to be too far underneath a tree to where you can't bring it up as far as you need to be. You know what I mean? Just those little things that just make a difference. So I spent time with them, and during that time, I was still working in the restaurant business, and I ended up, my last civilian job was, I was the corporate training manager for Applebee's. I opened up the restaurant over on Lake Lansing Road there.
Yep. Been there quite a few times.
And, so I was successful in the civilian sector. But during that time, I had gotten married. We were raising 2 young kids. My wife was working as well. And, I was like, my schedule was either 5 to 5, 10 to 10, or 3 to 3, as far as closing it down and getting ready for the next day. And it was never really in the restaurant business, it's like you got people that call off, and you might have to fill that void. So it didn't give me a whole lot of quality time with my family. So I started looking at different jobs, something that was going to be more consistent. And there was this job posting that I saw on the board at the Bay City Armory when I was drilling. And it was the SIDPERS guy, the SIDPERS OIC, or person in charge of SIDPERS, running the database of record for the Michigan Army National Guard.
And what kind of records would be in SIDPERS?
Oh, my goodness, just their enlistments. You'd hand punch in their enlistments, retirements, education, officer OERs, NCOERs, medical, at the time, LODs. They were still manual at the time. We would do reorganizations during AT. When you get something that comes down saying, hey, we're downsizing, we're going in this direction, you'd sit down with the units and you'd try to figure out where these guys are going, especially if they've got, strength of 100%, and now they're going down to where, they don't need 100% because they've downsized from, like 150 to 100. So where do these guys go? So we did a lot of that. We worked with the state as well, as far as state archived records, discharges, congressionals. I mean, the list goes on. Family support at the time was not even heard of. As a matter of fact, I started family support back in 2000. I mean, they had family support, but it wasn't family support at the time. It was like there was one person that, just was there. And so I ended up, they put me in a government vehicle, and I remember my first ask was at an American Legion in Gogebic.
Where is Gogebic?
About 20 miles or so from Wisconsin.
Oh, wow. Way up there.
Yeah. So depending on what side of the street you're on, it's either Gogebic or Gogebic. So, and I drove up there in a government car. It was like, had to stay the night because it was like, about a 6-hour drive plus. I drove up there for a $350 check. And
which was not very much money at the time.
Oh, it was. I don't even think it paid for my my travel, but it would just kind of amused me that I would go up all that way just for that. But we established a relationship, and now you get that reoccurring allotment from them. So I did a lot of interaction with some local businesses to support, the Guard and their families, and I see that it's just growing. I mean, throughout the years, they've just went in so many different directions that I had a vision with, and I couldn't be more proud that we are taking care of the Michigan Army National Guard, or the Michigan National Guard is taking care of their soldiers and their airmen, and that's very encouraging, especially the day and times that we're in right now.
Absolutely.
So,
I know that I've worked for FR Family Readiness Group for a long time, doing funerals, and that it's huge compared to what it was.
Absolutely.
Like my first deployment compared to now, I know it's gotten a lot better. So
correct.
So you're at SITPERS, and how long are you at SITPERS?
I stayed at SITPERS and this was when it was. Well, I started out at the old Waldorf French building over on Mount Hope in Cedar. It's the old junior high school.
Yep.
Then we moved from there to Southland, which is right behind McDonald's, that strip mall. It's MLK now, but it was Logan Street at the time. And then we moved to, where did we move? Oh, we moved.
Washington Street.
You know something? No, I was in Southland at the time. They ended up moving to this building here now. But during that time, I'd applied for a AGR, an Active Guard Reserve position with recruiting in 2004.
2004.
Right. And ended up getting the position.
Was it for like a commander or
operations officer?
Operations officer.
So, and I was still in transition. So, going from the Bravo Battery, 182nd, I went from there to the battalion in Detroit as the S1 officer during my time as a technician for SITPERS. And then I went from there to the headquarters commander in Detroit, and then back to Bravo Battery as the commander. So, and then all of a sudden I get this job, and that was within a that 1995 to 2004 year period. Those were the assignments that I had.
It's a lot of moving.
It is.
But was that pretty common as an officer, like moving around that much?
Back then, it was about a year and a half was what they focused on. And as time went on, and we can talk about that down the line, but the lack of officers that they were experiencing as time went on, the assignments became longer, I guess, for as far as the best that I can explain it. So between 1995 and 2004, I had those 4 assignments. And
what was your rank at this time?
Captain.
Captain.
Yep. And then, of course, we had 9/11 happen. And even though I was AGR, I was still authorized to be the battery commander until they could find a good replacement. So during that time, they mobilized because of 9/11. They didn't have enough of security forces, MPs. And so they decided to use combat arms. And the 182nd got called. So at the time...
And what do you remember the date that you guys were called?
Yeah, it was, I want to say October of 2004. It was right around when I got the AGR position.
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
So you get called, and just to kind of put it into perspective, the Iraq War, Afghanistan war is going on right now, and it's probably the thickest.
Yep, Fallujah.
That it was. Yep.
So, excuse me. So, at the time, Scott Myers was the battery commander for Charlie Battery. Gus Gorzinski had transferred out, or moved, and he became the commander. And it's a funny story how I met Scott, but I don't know if you want to hear that, but he's just a great guy. One of my best friends. Just a quick kind of digress here, just a minute. He came into the battalion, and we were at the officer club doing a AAR with Barry Myers at the time, which was the battalion commander. And I was like, and if you know Colonel Myers, Barry Myers, he has like a photographic memory. I remember we did a layout of all of our BII. We had like 164 pieces of BII. We did a layout, and he'd walk by and he goes, "You're missing something." I'm like going, "No, I think it's all there, sir." "Nope, you're missing a number 2 wrench with a blah, blah, blah." I mean, he was just like that. And I was like, he was going on this rant as far as, during the AR. And I was like, I looked over at Scott, and I had just met Scott. And I said, "Man, you're not related to this guy, are you?" And he goes, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's my dad." And I was like, but, down the line, through the years, we've been great friends, our families. We had the Captain's Club, which was Scott, Gus, Don Dancer, John Wojcik, and Brian Bonney at the time, and General Bennett. Levita Bennett was in it.
Yep.
Then it went from that to the Majors Mafia. We always stuck together, supported each other, and that was very important to us as a group coming up through the chain of command. Something I don't really see a whole lot of nowadays. But that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. But those are kind of like your battle buddies. And the cool thing about the Guard, not that I'm trying to sell the Guard,
Right.
but in the AGR program, you get to grow in rank and grow in responsibility, and you have those people your whole career.
Right. But I will tell you, 3 of them were technicians: Scott, Dawn, and no, I guess not. It was, Scott, Dawn, and Gus were technicians, and they, Dawn has since retired, and
PAO,
Scott is on
right?
different orders. Yeah, she was the PAO, and then the 126 Press Camp Headquarters Battalion Commander, then back to the PAO, and then she ended up as the Family Support Director before she retired. And Scott's story, he's still in. Gus is getting ready to retire. But anyhow, those relationships were very important to us because, not everything is always going to be grandiose. You know what I mean? So it was a good support system. And our families were supported as well. I mean, we all, we'd have dinner together. We'd go to Silver Bells in the city. We'd go to Uncle John's, take the families. And that was important. But as you get up into the ranks, those experiences become far and few between. But what is wonderful about that is that you meet them, or if you put together a little gathering, it's like you pick up where you left off, and it's no different. So anyhow,
so when you grow in rank, I grew up my career was enlisted. So
right.
Do those close friends, do you ever, like, any politics ever get in the way? I know officers sometimes, like, it's a little more political.
You mean as far as between the enlisted and the officers?
Or like you guys are a group of friends, and
right.
Like at any point, did you have any like political conflict, or was there any
with each other or
situations like that?
No,
Maybe
because we
with
all
them.
kind of had our separate lanes at the time. Scott was like in logistics. Gus was in operations. I was in personnel. And Don was in PAO. And there was Bill Wilcox. He was in IT. And what was cool about that is that if we needed something, like if as a battery commander I needed like some parts or some maintenance done to the launchers, I mean, Scott was the OMO. At the CSMS.
You knew who to call right away.
Exactly. And same with operations. If I needed to get a drill date changed or something, it wasn't a big deal. And that relationships to me are so important. And it proved to be a good direction and a good focus for me, especially when we got over into Afghanistan. But we'll get to that in a little bit later. But so after recruiting, was there anything else I could talk about on that, or?
So it's 2004. You're still in recruiting.
Correct, and I'm still the battery commander for the 182nd Field Artillery in Bay City. And we get a call that we're going to be going overseas. At the time, Scott Myers and I were Bravo Battery and Charlie Battery commanders. And we didn't have enough personnel to fill the void that the national level, as far as a security forces unit that they were looking for. So but our battalion commander at the time, which is retired Major General Stone decided that we were going to join the two batteries together. And basically put together that security force and send it forward. I don't want to say that we flipped a coin to see who was going to be the commander that went over. It ended up being Scott. Thought it was a good choice. I wished it could have been me. I even offered to go over as his XO, but because I was a captain, and we pushed that, Scott and the battalion commander pushed it, but they weren't having it. So we ended up forming that group, and he had already, I think the tipping point is that Charlie Battery was getting ready and had been training to go to NTC. So they probably were a little bit more trained up as far as how that cohesion looked. Mm-hmm. So I think that it was a good choice. And he did some amazing things for them over there and kept them safe. For the most part, I mean, yeah, so they end up going over to Fallujah, and I get a call in March 13th, I think it was. And one of my guys from Bravo Battery was sniped and killed.
Ricky Kiefer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, wow, just not a good thing. And I got the call from Major General Stone, battalion commander at the time. And for a long time I was like, man, did I have something to do with this? Because, I'm picking and choosing who's going. You know what I mean? And, at the end of the day, it could have been anybody else. And that's kind of what I resolved myself to. But, so, they're over there for like 18 months. And they come back and, we get all reunited. And I'm not the battery commander because there's really no battery anymore. There's just the stay behinds. And they had some young lieutenant taking care of that. So transferred out of there, still with the recruiting. I was with recruiting for about 11 months. And Sam Dahlman, Colonel Dahlman, was with the 119th at the time. Mm-hmm. Well, had been previously with the 119th. He was the...
HRO, right?
Well, he was, when I first came in, he was the RRB commander. Mm-hmm. And then it was Colonel Houchley became the RRB commander. But during that time, Colonel Dahlman had been talking to me about maybe going to the 119th. And that's tube artillery versus rockets. Mm-hmm. And back then, there was always kind of like a rub between the two field artillery units. Who was better, as far as operationally. And it was a good competition. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Kept us on our toes, kept us competitive. But at the end of the day, Colonel Houchley comes in. I'm with him for about 3 months. And then I get the call that I'm going to the 119th as the OIC /S1.
AGR OIC.
Correct. So I'm with them and, trying to learn their history, which is a very solid and very impressive history. I mean, they go back to World War I, where they served in the trenches doing field artillery with 75 millimeter howitzers or guns, Mm-hmm. So Didn't do well there.
So what year did you officially take OIC?
2005.
2005. And was that?
It was no, in this building.
It was in this building.
Yeah, it was where IT is at now. That was our headquarters unit.
Okay.
Major General Estrada, which was the battalion commander at the time, and then General Terrell, which was the XO, didn't really care for me. Didn't like me at all. And probably for good reason, because I just wasn't getting the hang of the tube artillery. But before that, they promoted me to major and put me in the S3 slot, which is when things kind of went awry. And, you know, it is what it is. I just wasn't picking up on the direction that they were going. I was still had that rocket mentality, which just didn't work for tube.
And what kind of tube was it at that point?
At the time, it was the
109?
109er8s.
109
And then they went to the Mike, and during my time there, they went from that to AFATADs with the Mike 777, which is still 109er8, but it's a lighter version that can be heliopt. So during that time I did that, and then I had my first, and during that time as well, because I was AGR, I did a lot of casualty notifications. And it's a very humbling experience. And, you know, a lot of people are like, you know, I just can't do this. I can't, you know, I just don't have that mentality to be able to do it. And so I did a lot of praying about it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that it's an honor to be able to memorialize the soldier for what they've done for the country. I mean, they need that closure, you know, the families. There's one that sticks out in my mind, actually two that stick out in my mind, doing casualty, actually three. The first one was Wayne Dresky.
I deployed with him.
Yep.
Yep.
He was, obviously, as you know, his vehicle was hit by an IED, and he ended up spending time at BAMC in Texas. But the scar tissue in his lungs was just too much.
He was the longest survivor.
He was the longest survivor,
if I remember correctly.
And I think that's when President Bush at the time visited.
I mean, there's a picture in the paper of him talking.
Yeah.
President Bush talking to him.
I didn't know him personally, but I got to know him through his family and through his friends. And so the experience was going to BAMC, picking him up, putting him on a commercial flight, flying him back to Detroit. And that would have been the end of it. But there was so much going on with him specifically that I went there and picked him up. And it's kind of one of those experiences to where people would think that it's ghoulish. And I can still picture it in my mind. But, you know, you have to make sure that before you close the coffin that all of his medals are straight. Everything on his uniform is right. And then you put him on the plane and you make sure that he is being put in the right way so the embalming fluid doesn't go to any part of the body and just disfigures him. So we get to Detroit and I pull him off on the plane, and you can't talk about anybody, why you're in your dress blues or what you're doing, where you're going. And so I get off the plane, and there's MSP and the funeral home. They pull out onto the tarmac. I walk down onto the tarmac, and then you give him funeral honors as he's coming off the plane.
Honorable transfer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And well, as you know, and so we put him into the hearse. I jump into one of the squad cars. We go to the funeral home, and then you have to open up the casket to make sure nothing's disturbed. And then they had a memorial service at his high school football field.
Yep.
So they have that, and then we get back to the funeral home. We go to the airport, we put him on a plane, and we take him to Arlington. And you go through that whole process again. And it was very humbling, and it was very kind of surreal, to do that. And but it was also very honoring for me to be able to do that for the family. So that's just one experience that I had. The other one was notifying a family on Christmas Eve. And this was of an active duty soldier. And Knox is very specific, as you know. You can't tell anybody but the person that is assigned. And it was his wife, and his wife wasn't around. So we went to his parents' house, myself in Chaplin, Washington. And they knew, but we couldn't come out and tell them. So we finally tracked down his wife. After being there, we were there from like 10 till 4 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So we tracked down his wife. She's in Arizona visiting her family. And then we tell them, and we tell their family. And it was tough, especially on Christmas Eve. I think about it every Christmas Eve.
How can you not?
Yeah, to carry on to that, one of the young ladies that were, so I went to church the next day. One of the young ladies that was there, that was her best friend growing up in high school. She just lived like 2 doors down from him. So it was like, wow, you never know. You never know. It does hit home. It does. But it's still, it is tough. I think that's probably one of the toughest jobs in the military is casualty notification. I mean, think about it. I don't know. It's just my take.
Who would want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. But so during my time at the 182nd, I did have some good experiences. I was the OIC for the Ford Funeral Salute, which means that we went down to the Old Guard, trained with the Old Guard, did some salutes at Arlington Cemetery, which was incredible. Did a couple of naval salutes, and which was kind of different than what we do for the Army. They put them in a caisson, and every 200 meters they fire around until they get to the interment, which was kind of interesting. But we trained with them for about 2 weeks.
Was it on a 155?
It was on a 75 millimeter.
75 millimeter.
Yes.
105 howitzer.
What's that?
What was the howitzer?
105.
105 howitzer. Yeah.
No. The 105 is the one that we provided with the salute.
Okay.
They still have the old 75 millimeters at the Old Guard. So, and then when we got back here, we would, train on how to do that until the actual Ford service. So we did one at the airport, the Kent County Airport, as he's coming in on Air Force One, and did one there. And then we did one at the interment in Grand Rapids. And it was honoring. And we were the first National Guard unit in the history of presidential salutes, because we don't have an active duty base here in Michigan. Every other president that's lived and died, they lived in a state that has an active duty installation, and that's where that unit does, there. So we did the salute, and we got a ton of accolades. I had Military District of Washington call me. I had the division commander from the old guard call me, and it was basically transparent. It couldn't have been better if we came down there and did it ourselves. So that was a very positive
Absolutely.
119 experience. The other ones, not so much. But so the transition from there, I went from the 119th to the 46th MP Command as their deputy G1. It's a 2-star command, so it's a G1 versus an S1.
At the RFSC?
At the RFSC. Well, actually, it was still over at the Washington Street at the time.
And what year is this?
2007.
2007.
Yep. So, and the reason why I was transferred was because they just didn't see me as the future of the 119th Field Artillery. And I don't mind seeing that because it gets good later on in my career.
Okay.
So identify with this bad experience now and the relationships that you've built throughout the years, and how, if you have a bad experience, you don't talk shit about the bad experience. You don't talk like it's everybody else's fault. You just take responsibility for whatever shortcomings you had, or perceived shortcomings, and you move on. And I was told that I was getting moved by retired Brigadier General Owen. He's like, we just don't see you as the future of the 119th. And I was like, well, do you know, sir? I mean, have you seen my bio? Now, I was trying to defend myself, and and I didn't really have a defense, but when you're, I don't want to say attacked, but when you're called out on certain things that you're probably not really good at, you have a tendency to try to defend yourself. So one of the things that I brought up was, sir, have you read my bio? He's like, no. And I go, well, have you read my OERs? Well, yeah, I've read your OERs. They're good. I was the MacArthur Award recipient as the best, company grade officer in the state. I was in the top 3 at the national level. I know what I'm doing. I just don't think that I've had enough opportunity, which really wasn't true. I just, for some reason, was not getting tube artillery at the time. That's the bottom line, So I got moved, and I go to the 46 MP Command, and then we move over here not over to this campus, over to the RFSC. So things are going good, Major General Cannon was the commander at the time. And I can't remember who was the deputy, but he had retired. And they brought in Mandy Murray. And then we got called up in 2009. And they didn't have, and since then, she had sort of kind of been running the show because they had called Major General Cannon over to Iraq to do some observation and some mentoring for about 6 months, I think it was.
Was that Abu Ghraib? Because he was at Gitmo too.
Yeah, it was Abu Ghraib. Yeah. And so anyhow, we are prepping for deployment, and the MTO or the DMD that comes back doesn't have a 2-star on it. So Mandy Murray gets the call. And, without, you can learn from good leadership and you can learn from bad leadership. She just was a very, very toxic person, which was identified with at the national level. She had 2 DODIG complaints against her when we got back. One was from the California and Arizona tag, which combined a MP battalion and sent them over. And one was from one of our own internal soldiers, which were quantified. So it was a very difficult deployment for a lot of us. She was very toxic, very, if she liked you, you were in. If she didn't, you were gone. And the one and only interaction that I had with her was at one of the mold sites. And she's trying to close out OERs. And I know this sounds funny, and it's not funny, but this is where I think we're missing the mark sometimes, is being able to, being able to maintain your integrity without being bullied into doing something that you know isn't right or ethical. Mm-hmm. And I think that we sometimes turn a blind eye to being told by our leadership what you're going to do and what I want you to do, and not being able to tell them candidly, that's probably not going to work, or I really can't do that, or I shouldn't do that. And so as minor as it was, she wanted me to fill out her OERs. And I was like, okay. So I filled them out and I sent them to her. And she's like, what's this? And I go, well, I populated all the admin data for you. Everything's correct. You just need to put in your comments, ma'am, and I'll process them. We'll be done. She goes, no, I need you to put in the comments. And I go, excuse me, ma'am? She's like, just put in the comments and get it done and send them back so I can sign them. And I go, no. And she goes, excuse me? And I go, no, ma'am. You want me as a major to put in comments for lieutenant colonels, colonels. It's unethical. I don't know them. How is it that you want me to do this? She goes, just do it, get it done. I go, no, ma'am, I'm not doing it. She's like, okay, fine. So about 5 minutes later, the chief of staff at the time, which was Colonel White, which I just really like, just a good guy. He came and said that we're going to move you to logistics, to the G4. You're going to be the deputy G4. And I go, okay. I knew exactly why. And she never did get her OERs because she put a medical officer in as the G1. But at the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say is that those that are listening, relationships and integrity are probably the two number one things that I believe that and humility will keep you successful. Because if you're trying to get around something, it's going to catch up with you at the end of the day. It really is, and you got to put your faith in God. And that's what I did when I was told that I was getting moved. And I found out that I just had a knack for the G4. Never knew it until I got there. And so I was in charge of an LSA They had about 2,200 Afghan National Army soldiers. And
what is an LSA?
life support area.
Okay.
And my main focus was sustainment operations. And so I'm teaching my counterpart, how to maintain a logistical trail, how to do forecasting, how to actually order it, and how to check to make sure that it's right, and yada, yada, yada. And, about 7 months into the deployment, well, leading up to the 7 months to deployment, they were just struggling with getting fuel into the LSA. They would go to Parwan, pick up the fuel with a tanker, and they'd bring it back and it'd be half full. It's because they were stopping along the way and filling up their buddy's gas station.
Oh, wow.
So the bottom line is that this is where the relationships come into play. And I had built a strong relationship with my counterpart through my interpreter. And I said, we're going to push this all aside. How do you do things? And I'd been asking him this all along. And they really, computers to them were exciting. It was new. They were like really wanting to learn it, but they just didn't have the capability of learning our systems. So I learned their system, and we improved on their system. And at the end of the day, we were the first LSA in the Northeast region to be self-sustaining, which means that we were saving the government $2 million a year in diesel fuel.
It's a lot.
It is. And the first time that tanker came in full, I told him to just take a measuring stick, put it in there. You know what I mean? From when you leave Parwan, have somebody put a measuring stick in there, tell you where it's at. And then when it gets here, you do the same thing. Pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was so excited. It's common for men to hold hands and walk together over there.
Mm-hmm.
He grabbed my hand as if I was like his best friend because he was so excited that tanker came in full. And my interpreter was like, dude, what did you do? And I go, I don't know what I did. He goes, man, you're family. He says, I've never seen that. So that was a huge success for me. Saved government money, had a great deployment, some scary times, when we were there, as far as the rockets. What was interesting is that, our technology is so advanced, you can tell where a rocket comes from in a matter of seconds. And based on where it hits, as far as the crater size and the trajectory, and you can get within I don't even want to say a 50 meter, maybe even 25 meter radius of where that was at. So we had this one rocket come in, and we found out later that, immediately there was gunships in the air. People were rolling out to the area that they were told that it came from. And there was nobody in sight. And come to find out, what they were doing is that they were just kind of aiming it, where they thought it might land. And they were putting ice in it and just resting the round on the tube. And then they'd take off. And 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, the ice would melt, the rocket would go down, and it would expend. And they'd get out there and nobody would be there. How clever is that?
That is clever.
You know what I mean?
I would have never thought to do that.
I know, right? So that was a interesting experience as well. But, I had a great deployment. I came back safe. And that's really all that matters, right? Is getting everybody back safe. So when I got back, she was still so pissed at me. She was very vengeful. She tried to get me out of the guard, because on Title 10, you have to jump through hoops. But once you come back to Title 32, it's pretty easy.
So was she a M-Day at the time? Or what?
Yeah, when she came back, she was M-Day. And General Stone didn't like her. I don't want to say he didn't like her. He didn't appreciate the way that she was treating people because they heard back here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They hear things. I mean, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And so we get back here, and General Vadney came over to visit us while he was over there. And General Stone's like, I would like for you at our homecoming. He's like, hey, I want to talk to you about maybe coming and working for me. He was the installations officer. He's the GO, the general officer, as my strategic planner for installations. I said I'd love to do it. I was ready to get out of, I was there for 5 years, at the 46th. And she's like, no, you're not going anyplace. Actually, I didn't say anything to her. Apparently, General Stone said, hey, I would like for Major Coop to come up as my strategic planner. She's like, no. So he went to General Vadney, and General Vadney's like, yeah, we're going to move him. So it's a God thing. You know what I mean? So I worked for General Stone. And during that time, just to kind of caveat just how toxic leadership is, it will come back to bite you. Whoever's listening out there, she did not like Dan Lincoln. What she didn't realize, well, maybe she did, maybe she didn't, is that Dan Lincoln when he went on leave, guess who he visited in Florida? General Gregory Vadney. Because it was his best friend, and they grew up in the field artillery together. So one of the drills, unbeknownst to Sergeant Major Lincoln, she calls him up in front of the formation on a Sunday, and she says, so we need to bid farewell to Sergeant Major Lincoln. He's being reassigned. Sergeant Major Lincoln's going, what the heck? And she had done this all behind the scene because she didn't like him. She didn't like the way that he interacted with her, I guess. Troops loved him. So General Vadney's like, and this wasn't even General Vadney. Didn't even know about it. So General Vadney ends up making him the state command sergeant major, just to make a point. And anyhow, she ended up being pushed out of command by General Vadney. I don't want to say pushed out of command, and I don't want to say that General Vadney had anything to do with that. Just I think that it was a good decision that she was gone. And then General Stone took over as the commander of the 46th. So I was there, and
what year is this?
We got back in 2011. So 2000, and I actually went to work for General Stone when he was the installations commander in 2011. It was like maybe 2-3 months after we got back, because you got that 30 days that you can decompress as far as extra leave or whatever kind of leave that they called it at the time. I can't remember. And then a couple months after that, I went to work for General Stone. Worked there for only about, 7-8 months. And then I got moved to Fort Custer as the range operations officer.
So you get transferred to Fort Custer, and tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I get the call. Actually, I'm in Indiana at Camp Atterbury. And I'd only been at Fort Custer for, I want to say, I got there in October, and then I get a call in, I want to say, January, February timeframe, maybe March, because I remember it being cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a call and says, "Hey, you're being transferred." I'm getting a call from Gus Gorzinski, Colonel Gorzinski, and I go, well, "Okay, where am I going?" "Well, you're going to Jackson to the 272nd as the Group S1." And I go, "Oh, that's cool. It's closer to home. I'm not driving, an hour and a half one way, even though I didn't mind it because, you get to clear your head, when you're going and, you get up at 5 and you're on the way and it's nice and smooth." And I go, "Well, yeah, that's cool. It's half the time, if even less than half the time." He's like, "Yeah, but you were requested by Colonel Bartolacci, which is now the group commander." Oh. So my experiences with Colonel Bartolacci were not so pleasant. He was yet another one of our challenges as far as toxic leadership. And because of his relationship with Mandy Murray, General Murray, and the way that I was moved, he made it a point to try to follow through on her plan as far as removing me from the AJR program. Everybody kind of knew it. Why would you request me? After our not so good interactions over the past year and a half.
And what year is this that you officially moved to 272nd?
2013.
2013. So how many years of active duty do you have at this point?
Little over 10.
A little over 10.
Well, not including the Marine Corps.
So if you add the Marine Corps in
12.
12 years. Okay.
Yeah. So not enough for sanctuary, but it is what it is, right?
Yep.
But anyhow, so all of a sudden my phone starts ringing off the hook a couple of days later. I get a call from Scott Myers. I get a call from, General Stone. I get a call from Don Dancer, John Wojcik, which is now one of my best friends. Him and Colonel Houchley have become my two go-to guys. John and I actually ran our first marathon over in Afghanistan. I was 48 years old, smoking a half-pack cigarettes a day, and I still ran it in under 4 hours.
Oh, wow. That's a good time.
Yeah. But that's a whole nother story. We had some great interactions over there in Afghanistan, John and I. He's just a wonderful person. Just very logical, somebody that he's like a sounding board. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of like a sounding board to him sometimes, even though he's brilliant and smart. He needs that as well sometimes, But anyhow, I digress. So my phone starts blowing up. Hey, I heard about your move, and we got your back. This is from the now Majors Mafia. Mm-hmm. Went from Captain's Club to Majors Mafia. Then I get another phone call about a day later from Scott Myers. He's like, "Hey, you're good. Don't worry about it." And Scott, for some reason, always has the G2 on everything. He's got his hand on the pulse of the Guard. How he does it, I don't know. He's very charismatic, very smart, just a good guy. And I go, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, Bertolacci's not going to be the commander. And I go, really? How's that? Well, you don't go around grabbing a officer, female helicopter pilot's ass. And I go, oh. And this was kind of a rumor that had been going on that he was very, I don't know, not compliant with certain rules that the military has as far as sexual, sharp compliancy or whatever. So he ends up getting pushed out of the Guard. During that time, I had went down and met with Beth Peters, which was the OIC there, and Lieutenant Colonel Beth Peters. And this is where I am the type of person that even though I trust you and I like you and you may be my best friend, but I'm certainly not going to take all of your experiences that you've had with a person into consideration when you tell me that they're just a horrible leader or they're a horrible person or it's not somebody you want to hang out with or whatever. I like to form my own opinion of people.
Absolutely.
And so I heard from a few people that she was just tough and she was like, very standoffish and she didn't care what you thought. It was her way or the highway. And it wasn't from anybody from the Majors Mafia, but I heard it from other full-timers. I get down there and she's direct. She's firm on her decisions. But by no means is she a toxic person. She ended up being just a great mentor for me. She taught me things, was patient. She was engaging. And, sometimes you just have to let that person show themselves to you for you to be able to understand where they're coming from instead of just going in there with preconceived ideas or opinions of other people. And I'm glad I did, because I still talk to her to this day. She's a good person. She actually is the commander in charge of the Detroit JROTC program. I think she's just getting ready to pop smoke, though. She actually wanted me to go work for her when I first retired. And it was like, at the time, it just seemed like it was too much work. I had a lot of things going on with the VA, and I just didn't want to make that commitment as far as driving down to Detroit. And she understood, but so during that time, the new commander that comes in is Colonel Terrell, the XO from the 119th that was on board with Colonel Estrada, which was the battalion commander, and they were best friends at the time. It's really good friends to this day. Comes in. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, what the heck? Really, Lord? making my challenges, you're giving me an opportunity to build strength, I guess. But Colonel Terrell absolutely became my biggest supporter other than Colonel Peters when I was there. And I think that it goes to the fact that of the relationship or the consistency as far as holding true to my values. And sometimes people they change, they identify, a light bulb goes off. And I'm not sure what that was for General Terrell, but he became my biggest supporter. And all my OERs reflect it, So I was there from 2013 to 2015-ish. Yeah, 2000. It was, I was there from 2013 till February of 2015. And at the time, Colonel Houchley was the chief of staff, and he was in Colonel Durkat was coming in as chief of staff, and from the 3. So Colonel Roman was going into the G1 as the G1 and had requested me personally to be his deputy. And so I moved. I got moved. Got promoted because I was a DA select. So within a matter of a couple of weeks, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel and was serving as the deputy G1 for the state of Michigan.
And what year was this that you were serving as the deputy?
2015 till 2018. During that time, you get a command waiver. General Vadney thought I would be a good fit for the, what's the Northern Strike Battalion? Now, it used to be the, it's underneath the 63rd. It's right here in this building. Anyhow, it was a
46. It's not 46.
No, it was, or no, it's not in this building. I'm sorry. It's over in the other building, right across the hall from, right next to medical.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that building.
Right across from the drill floor. Goodness sakes. Anyhow, it was a battalion, and they needed a battalion commander. Hadn't had one there for 2 or 3 years. So I got put into that battalion as the commander. And we ended up being the support staff for Northern Strike in 2016, which was the largest Northern Strike in the history of Northern Strike.
And how long has Northern Strike been going on?
Northern Strike behind the scenes has been going on since, I want to say 2000, maybe even 10, but there's no funding for it. And the purpose behind it was it to become an opportunity to for active duty units to come train, like on their tables, to get them certified, because during the reorganization and the modernization of combat arms, you had folks coming back when the Iraq War started kind of tapering off, coming back to, Fort Hood, Fort Sam Houston, Fort Benning, that weren't able to train because there wasn't enough land space. So, and some of them needed to go to NTC, and there wasn't enough land space or there wasn't enough rotation. So Camp Grayling, being the largest landmass in the entire National Guard as far as training area, and the 3rd largest in the country, active or reserve, or National Guard, they thought it would be a good opportunity for them to become this training center, which is now the NADWIC, I think is what they call it. So we went up there and had huge successes supporting that event. We were the Joint Visitors Bureau, and we had about 104 stars, literally. We had Commandant of the Marine Corps. We had General Abrams, Force Com Commander. We had civilian 4-star in charge of manpower. The list goes on. We had Jake the Snake, which was the father of the Predator, which was a 3-star civilian. And the list goes on. If you were a 1-star, you were sleeping in the barracks, pretty much.
It's crazy.
It is
never
crazy.
Hear that.
It is crazy. We had the governor there. We had, anybody that was anybody was there. We had congressmen, senators at the national level, at state level. The list was endless, and it was very, very, very successful. We got recognized on several occasions. You had multicultural, international. You had the Danes there, you had the Brits there, you had the Marine Corps, the Air Force. I don't know where you were at in 2016, but you had Marines.
Recruiting.
You had Marines jumping out of the back of Chinooks into Lake Marguerite.
Yep.
With parachutes. You know what I mean? It's a great training event, and it continues to get better year by year. So I was there from November of 2016, 2015, still as the deputy G1 and the battalion commander till November of 2016. So almost a year. Then I got the call to be the 182nd Battalion Commander. They were just coming back from Dubai. And commander at the time was Colonel Colito, another guy that I grew up with in the Michigan Army National Guard, field artillery. Still talk to him to this day. That was 30 years ago. He was coming out of command, and it was recommended that I take over or kind of backfill him. So I did, and had just great successes there. Normally, and this is where the relationship building comes in. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that, I know this sounds kind of corny, but people in general, but soldiers, they really don't give a shit how much you know until they know how much you care about them and how much you appreciate them. And you just don't want to go in there guns blazes. You want to observe things. So I did that for a couple of months, and things were just going great. They came back over strength. I think the authorization was for 398. We were at like 416.
That's good.
And normally, if you look historically at statistics, after a deployment, doesn't matter if it's combat deployment, doesn't matter, but any deployment that you serve over a year with, if you've got people that are going to ETS, your strength's going to probably drop well below 100%, because they're just done with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We continue to go up. And it was because I was actively going out to the units. And this has nothing to do with that. But, I'd drive on a drill weekend to Bay City. First time they had seen a battalion commander there in 3 years. I'd, drive here to Lansing, to Charlie Battery. Same thing. Building relationships, building rapport, building trust. And it paid me big dividends. We were recognized, Joe Gregory and I. Joe Gregory was my battalion commander, my battalion CSM. And we were recognized at one of the leadership conferences as the #1 battalion in the state for recruiting, retention, and attrition. Hell, when I was the battery commander with Bravo Battery back in the day, we were recognized as the #7 battery in the entire National Guard for recruiting, retention, and attrition up at the national level. And that's because of relationships. Mm-hmm. It's because of consistency with your actions. It's because holding true, and not making assumptions and being vengeful. Somebody makes a mistake, guess what? You embrace it and you drive on. And one of my leadership philosophies is that we don't hone in on, I just can't tolerate somebody that will hone in on something and just hold on to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're not the person that I want on my team. You've got to be able to let it go. You don't know what's going on with that soldier. I had a soldier that I had his company or his platoon commander, company commander come to me and go, "Sir, we got to do something with this guy." And I go, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, he's constantly STAing. He's constantly showing up late for drill." Well, that's your issue. You know what I mean? You need to deal with that. That's why you're the commander. We've tried. And so I ended up calling him into the office and doing a counseling on him because, you have to do the progressive counseling.
Yep.
Stuff.
Paper trail.
Yep, paper trail. And come to find out, this kid, this young adult that was married, had 3 kids. And he was working, I think, 4 part-time jobs just to put diapers on those kids.
It's a lot.
Yeah. That's why he was showing up late for drill. That's why he was showing, trying, STAing as much as he could.
Did the commander even ask, why are you?
I don't know, but I shared that with the commander and never heard about it again. Never even dropped that official counseling in his record. That goes back to knowing your soldier, having a relationship with your soldier, caring about your soldier.
Treat him like a human being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Be a human today. You know what I mean? So that goes back to, like I said, holding true to, if you want to be successful in anything that you do in life, keep your integrity. I mean, who was it? Colonel Pruitt, I think it was. He says, integrity is like a virgin. Once you lose your virginity, you can't really get it back. If somebody knows that you don't have integrity, you're never going to be trusted. They're never going to rely on you. When a soldier comes to you with a problem, you have their trust. Mm-hmm. And that's what you should be striving for. Because when they have your trust, they're going to work for you. They're going to work harder. They're going to know that what you're asking them to do, even though they don't understand it, you're always going to have their well-being in mind. And I'm just kind of preaching right now, but
I agree with everything you're saying. Did you think so I was a retention and recruiting NCO. So did you as far as the culture, do you think the culture, obviously since you started, they could put their hands on you compared to when this moment in time, did you think just changing the culture, what are some of the things that you think would have changed it as far as from going down the line as a battalion commander? What would you instill in your lower level, E5, E6, E7? What are some of the things that you would have?
What I would have done or what I did do?
What you did do.
Well, so I used to have regular meetings with my senior enlisted first sergeants and my commanders and their platoon leaders, and on many occasions the platoon sergeants. Here's my thing. During my battalion command, in leading up to that even, we're living in 4 different generations right now. Mm-hmm. Literally, in the workforce and in the military. The culture is changing. We're looking at a more secular type of a society. But you still have to understand it. So, because every generation has a different way of what right looks like, how they communicate, what they understand, or how they hear things. I had one commander go, I just don't get this guy. He's constantly asking me why. Well, if you go to any kind of leadership challenge courses or any kind of leadership training, they run you through those scenarios. And that specific generation, back in the day, if you ask why, you got the snot slapped out of you if you were in the Marine Corps. You don't need to know why. Just go do it. You know? Okay. Now they ask why, and it's not because they're questioning your authority. It's because they really want to know why so they can do the best job that they can. And it's hard for us, especially with the military mentality, to sometimes grab hold of that and embrace it. But he ended up being one of my best commanders. I had some great commanders during that time. It was a great experience. General Harris, which is now running for Congress in Georgia, was my brigade commander at the time. So it was a good experience. There's a couple of hiccups here and there, but at the end of the day, again, moving on from the 182nd back to just being the G1, I got moved from the G1 to my final assignment, which was the counter-drug commander for the state of Michigan, which is, it's a real mission. We have Air and Army embedded with 26 different MSP, Michigan State Police task forces, to do counter-drug interdiction. We have...
What kind of things do they do?
They do... They track the dealer. They connect the dots through communications, cell phones, laptops, surveillance observation, which we had helicopters, the air wing out at Grand Ledge that was assigned to us, tracking drug dealers from location A to location B, communicating with the ground forces. It was pretty incredible. We were also embedded with the IRS because there's a money trail, right? We were embedded with FBI, DEA, Homeland Security. The list is endless. I mean, as far as local law enforcement, tribal law enforcement. And our main focus was counter-drug interdiction. So it was a real-time mission. And probably one of the best missions I ever had. I mean, because you're making a difference. You're always training for war, but you never know if you can do it. You know what I mean? Until you actually get there. So yeah, that was my final assignment.
So over your period of time in service, what did you do outside of being in the military, like as a dad and husband?
Well, coming from the neighborhood I did, I really was focused on my career. So my family didn't want, or I don't want to say want, but need, food, or I just wanted to be able to provide for them the best that I could. So I did a lot of training, but when I did get the opportunities, very spiritual. I'd work as much as I could with our youth ministry, kind of taking them to places that would give them different experiences. I would spend as much time with my family that I could. I'd even take them to conferences sometimes when I got the opportunity, and if it existed. I coached soccer for my sons. My one son started coaching him when he was 5, up till he was a sophomore. And then he found swimming to be something that he enjoyed more. However, I had coached those kids from 5 until from 5 till when they were seniors in high school. And I actually had 7 or 8 seniors that were on the Mason State Championship team.
Oh, wow.
And what is very, I don't know, not funny, but very great is that my wife and I both play soccer. Her pastor started up a league, and kind of a funny story for that. I was coaching my son one time. He was about 11, and I pulled him off the field. And I said, "Hey, come on off the field. Looks like you need a break." And he's like, "Why'd you pull me off the field?" And I was like, "Well, it just didn't look like you were hustling. You weren't marking up. You were kind of out of place on a couple of positions. We'll put you back in." He's like, "You don't get it, coach." And I go, "Oh, well, what don't I get?" He says, "You don't get it because you don't play. And you never did." And I was like, okay. So I'm thinking, I've been coaching now for 6 years at that time. We never had a losing season. As a matter of fact, we won a championship. Think I know the game. And so I talked to my pastor about it because he played soccer in college. And he goes, "Well, there's something to be said about that." So he started up an indoor league, and my wife and I were playing. And we played right up until COVID. I was playing 4 times a week, 2 outdoor, 2 indoor.
Soccer zone. And then at Kenneth Hope Field, I was playing open, 18-year-olds and up. I was playing over 30 co-ed. I was playing over 40 men's and over 50 men's. Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. But what the coolest thing about it is that I started playing with the kids that I coached. Because now they're like in their, mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more cool than seeing these kids when they were like, knee-high to a grasshopper. And now they're grown men. Some of them married. And you're out there getting it done with them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a great experience. And same with the kids at the youth ministry. My wife and I started the youth ministry with about 15 kids. The church was struggling, and then they brought in Pastor Steve Malson. And, congregation started to grow. So we took the youth ministry from 15 kiddos, and now I think we have over 100 kids now in our youth ministry. Now, Lisa and I didn't have anything to really do with that much growth, but we actually started it with just like a handful of parents and the pastor, and it's taken off. So that was a great experience. I used to run a lot of half marathons, a lot of 10Ks, a lot of 5Ks, a lot of 10 milers. I did the Army 10 miler for, probably 5 or 6 years in a row. And then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. COVID really took the steam out of a lot of folks, especially in the military. And it was really disappointing the way that they handled it, I think. You've got now they're calling back people that they kicked out because of a new rule.
The shot, right?
Yeah. And I don't know. We lost 40,000 overall. Over COVID.
It was that much.
Between all branches. I believe that's the number I heard.
You can't.
Because they didn't want to take the shot.
Yeah. And it's just bad because it ended up being political. It's a political shot.
It was a political shot. Yep. They were using politics as I don't know. Politics as ammunition, or what's the word that they're looking for? They weaponized the political end of that. And they're doing it to this day. You know why they're giving the shots away free is because even though they say it's FDA approved, it's maybe approved, but there are certain things that people still could hold whoever's administering the shot liable if they have to pay for it. And the government doesn't want that liability. So that's why that's why they've been giving it away for free. So
it's just crazy, like during that time, during COVID, like how, like I'm not really into politics, it's never been my thing. Like, I mean, I care about who's leading our country and everything, and
for sure.
But like how political the military got. I mean, there were people who got in trouble for posts, social media posts.
Oh, I know.
And it's like, just leave it alone. Like, I don't know.
Let it go. Let it go. There's more important things in this world than that.
Absolutely.
Now, making sure that you limit and stop or even prevent the pandemic from growing, that's important. Don't get me wrong. But incorporating other things into the pandemic to, I don't know, meet your agenda, whatever that is, it doesn't do anybody good. And I've seen it here even in the Michigan National Guard. And it's unfortunate, but it's all part of it. People, not everybody is going to be that picture perfect person. They have their faults, and you just have to learn how to adapt and overcome. It's kind of like growing up as a kid. I mean, now, it's like, I don't believe in bullying, not at all. But, I got bullied as a kid. Yep. I mean, I was like 4'11" and, wrestling 80 pounds in 7th grade in junior high school. And had this one kid that used to chase me all the time. And so when you're bullied and you don't have the support mechanisms in place that you need to kind of mitigate that, you have to figure out, you got to think out of the box. How am I going to mitigate this? How am I going to not have this person to continually bully me, right? So one day I took a big stick and I put it in a bush, and sure enough, just like clockwork, I got chased, and then I stopped at the bush. And this bully was like, he looked at me and he goes, "You really want to go?" And I go, "Let's do it." And as soon as he got close enough, I pulled that stick out and I just beat the shit out of him. No, I didn't hit him in the face or the head, but I hit him in the back and I hit him in the belly, hit him in the legs, and he went down and he started crying like a bitch and never bullied me again.
Stood up to him.
And that's now you have these lawnmower parents and these helicopter parents, and every kid deserves a medal, and I think that it's important to encourage them and be positive, but you also don't want to do everything for them. You have to let them learn to live in how to adapt to adversity, because the world is it's not always going to be a nice place. And if you're making decisions for them all the time and not letting them make their decisions, they become insecure, and maybe you're afraid to try new things, or maybe you're afraid to do what maybe they internally or naturally are able to do and come by,
Yep.
But that's just my opinion, So kids have always been a focus. Kids and veterans and soldiers, I mean, people, I guess, in general, has always been my focus throughout my whole career, throughout my whole life. and learning that not everybody's going to like you. But if you can wake up in the morning and look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm okay, then you're doing the right things, you know?
So you had a lot of involvement outside the military while you were in. At what point did you know that it was time for you to hang up the uniform?
Well, really, that wasn't my decision. They have what they call the active service board for active duty officers and enlisted. And it's kind of what they call a shaping board. And, because, you get to a point to where you have done your job. And there's just that funnel. There's just no other place to promote you or move you to. And you need to make room for the up-and-comers. And that's okay. I totally am in agreement with that. So I went in front of the ASMB, the Active Service Member Board, or AS, Active Service Member Board, yep. And they decided that it was time for me to retire. And that's okay. And why it's okay is because by the time I did all my out processing and everything, it was 30 September of 2022 was my last day in uniform. But my last day in uniform, had they not taken me out, would have been in December of 2022, because I would have turned 60 years old, and you can't stay in as an officer after 60 years old unless you get a waiver, and they weren't approving any waivers for any extensions. So it really wasn't my decision. I was going to have to leave anyways 3 months after. It just gave me 3 months more of having time to myself, I guess.
So what was it like when you go to Fort Knox, and that's where everybody from Michigan signs out at?
Right.
What was it like? Like, what was the feeling once you were you signed the dotted line on your 214 or digital signature? What was your feeling? Like, what went through your mind?
Excitement, to some degree, maybe a little anxiety because of the unknown. I mean, I've been doing this really literally all my life at some point, whether it was reserve or active duty. There was only a very short period of time that I wasn't in the military, as we discussed, and that was back in the 90s. So excitement, anxiety, a little disappointment, because the way that I went out, I was a DA Select, a full bird colonel. And the DA Select was, it was approved by nobody that's in the Michigan Army National Guard, let alone the National Guard in general. It's an active military board of general officers and full bird colonels based on your performance. And it's coming full circle. The bottom line up front is that there was a general officer that his OER that he signed for me was just kind of vanilla because he didn't like me. And I know he didn't like me because I had people telling me that they didn't like me. Because I was candid with him. I was honest with him. But all my OERs up to that point, my officer evaluation reports by my senior rater was 1-star or 2-star, must promote, ready for command, ready to be promoted, must promote now. Send to senior service college, which is war college. And this one general officer that didn't care for me gave me that vanilla report, and it never made it to the board. So I was selected as a DA select to full board colonel. What's funny is that once he came out, he was only my senior rater for 6 months. Once he came out, all my senior rater ratings went back to that were 1 stars and 2 stars. Must promote ahead of peers. So you could see that his rating, even my battalion commander, General Harris, or my brigade commander, General Harris, I took some of my guys down and we ran in the Army 10 miler carrying the deuce flag. You know what I mean? Building those relationships, showing them that I'm not afraid to get down and do things that they're doing and supporting them. He recognized that. All my OERs, all my recognition, and it's not about recognition, but it's knowing that people are at least acknowledging the fact that you're a good person, you're a good leader, you're a good officer, and here's why I think that. And sometimes we use those OERs and those evaluations as a weapon to hurt people. And we do that a lot with other things too in the military. And the Guard has historically had its challenges. I think one of the best tags was General Vadney that I served under.
I would agree with that.
Here's a general officer that's standing next to the governor, and it starts pouring during our parade at Grayling, pass and review. And he gets out there and stands in the rain with them as the governor's talking. Really? You never will see that, and you never saw that with any of the other tags or even the tag now. And then all the other secular ideas that they're incorporating into the military, not necessarily the Guard, but the military in general, all the rules that they're implementing, all the changes as far as who we are looking to recruit and how we have to adjust training. It's almost like we are looking to, and each soldier is an individual, but you can't cater to each soldier. And when you try to do that, things get all boogered up. They just do. You have to have a certain standard across the board. And I think that we've lost sight of that to a certain degree. So I think I got out at the right time. I think it was a God thing. And I will tell you, coming back around to the whole 119 thing, General Terrell ended up being my biggest advocate, get me promoted. General Estrada became one of my best friends. He wanted me as his G1. He pushed for it. And even though he was a 2-star, the Michigan Army National Guard, ATAG, still has say over who goes where. And even though there was a deal struck, and even though, that deal was struck between the ATAG and General Estrada, because of the tag's guidance, you had to apply for every position. And I did apply, and actually applied 2 times, because the first time they said nobody was qualified. And There's only 3 people who applied, and I've had 12 years of active duty G1 experience, and I wasn't qualified. You got to think that something fishy's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied again, and then finally received a letter that said, while you were qualified, you weren't the best qualified. And, okay, so who got the position? Brian Burrell, which is a logistics officer with 0 personal experience. So I guess the takeaway here is that there's bigger plans for me. God didn't want me to have that position, because if he did, I would have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
And it exposed a lot of leadership, because I had senior leaders call me and saying, I'm sorry about that. You should have been there. You should have gotten it. And because of one person, I didn't. And you know something? That's okay. I can live with it. Because God did have better plans for me. I'm doing great things. I'm reconnecting with my family, because all that time that I was gone, you miss out on a lot of things. You truly do. As far as the training, deployments, especially when some of them are a month, 6 weeks at a time, and then, overseas, he basically said, hey, it's time, you're going to be fine. And I sit here now, doing things that I love doing, helping soldiers.
Helmets to hard hats.
Yep. Helmets to hard hats. I actually applied for the state position. Colonel Colito used to be that guy, and then COVID hit. The program kind of went to the side. And the program is, we pay vets. Doesn't matter what branch you come from. Our focus right now is Army National Guard. But we service all vets, and we pay them to learn a union skilled trade. They get full medical for them and their family. They get a pension after 5 years, not a 401k, but an actual pension. So if you bring somebody in, depending on the trade that they go into, and there are several out there, they can make $20 to $30 an hour, getting full medical. And after 5 years, if they go, this just isn't for me, they're walking away with a pension. It's just huge. There's no, and it's a great retention tool, is why the Michigan Army National Guard is completely on board with it. Because they understand the military. The unions do. They really do. If you have a unit that's deploying and they have those extra drills, or they have that extra AT or that extra training, and then they're gone for a year, they don't have to worry about coming back to a job, because it's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of a benefit is that to a commander that's taking them downrange? That commander now knows that that person is focused, instead of thinking about, what the hell am I going to do if I come back and I don't have a job? Even though ESGR exists,
a lot of things can happen.
A lot of things can happen. So, I applied for the job. Ed Colito used to be there. He said, hey, they called me. They wanted me to take it back, but I told them I didn't want it. They said, well, if you know of anybody that would be a good fit, let me know. So I applied for it. Mind you, I haven't had to apply for a job in over 3 decades, 30 years. And so I applied for it with the national director and 2 local leaders with the union in Monroe. And didn't get, I got past the first round, and then they flew me out to Washington, and I met with the director, interviewed with the national director and the national team, as far as the staff. And it's kind of ironic. I met this guy there's only two of us. There's me and this other guy that interviewed for it. I was sitting at the bar waiting for my to-go order at the hotel. And the bartender says, "Hey, so what are you doing here?" And I said, well, I'm down here interviewing for a helmets to hard hats job. And the guy standing next to me that was getting ready to order food was down there for the same thing. And so we kind of struck up a conversation, and just a great guy, associate pastor in his church, I think God connected us for whatever the reason. But I ended up not getting the job, and he did. And I was completely happy for him. I mean, really, just a smart guy. He had been doing it kind of on the outskirts with Michigan Works, and he's been helping veterans, pretty much his whole career. And but the national director called me and said, "Hey, we found a lot of value in your experiences. We'd like to create a position for you." So they created this military advisory role. I don't do a whole lot of anything. I get paid decent. And I get to work with a guy that I respect and I like, and I'm helping veterans. Mm-hmm. We've taken Michigan from this time last year. We've got 50% better than what we were before. And we're leading the nation, putting soldiers putting soldiers to work. And that's what it's all about, right? Taking care of soldiers.
Absolutely.
So it's just I love doing that. I sit on the VOA board for the Veteran Stand Down. I sit on, as far as what I did or what I'm doing other than the military, sit on a board called No Seniors Without Christmas. I was a reserve in-county sheriff deputy, which kind of brought me in contact with that program. So I sit on that board, and we service Eaton, Ingham, and Clinton County, to where we provide support over the Christmas for seniors that really don't have much. We service over 400, and we put together, like a tote that has, just anything that you can think of that they would need to get through the Christmas holidays. And then it's a first responder police initiative. So you've got fire, state police, local sheriffs, mm-hmm. That pick up whoever has been nominated for support, and they take it to their home. It's just a great program. And again, it's servicing community. It's about community. It's about relationships, and I keep hitting on that. But, the takeaway is you're never going to know what's important without building relationships with other people. What you think is important may not be even remotely as important as to something that you had learned from another person. Or the moment you think that you are smarter than somebody else, you may as well just sit at home and not do anything. Staying active, staying involved, is important, not only to yourself, but to the people that are around you, If you don't want to be that guy, then I don't want to be associated with you or that gal. Mm-hmm. Community, family, it's what it's all about to me. So.
Absolutely. Good point. Well, is there anyone that you'd like to recognize that made a huge impact on your career?
Well, first and foremost, it's family. My mother and my uncle were brother and sister, and I grew up right next door. They grew up next door to each other, or had families next door to each other. And my cousin, which is really my brother. He was the youngest of 6, and I was the oldest of 4. Whenever he used to get the snot kicked out of him, he'd come over and kick the snot out of me. We've had a relationship like that since to this day. As a matter of fact, I see him all the time. Brian Cost, retired Ames County deputy. We joined the Marine Corps together. We were best mans in each other's lives together. Our families are connected. So it's family first for me. I mean, as far as that relationship. I'd like to recognize some of the military members that actually had a huge influence on me even sitting here today. Sergeant Major Algren. He was my NCO when I was a SIDPERS OIC. When I first started getting into the active role of the Michigan Army National Guard. And what I mean by that is when I got hired into that position, the person that was the OIC, or the chief, I should say, was taken out on a board. And he was so disgruntled that I think he hired me because of just how inept I was with computers at the time. Mm-hmm. I told him that. I was like, if you want a project manager, you want a leader, I'm your guy. If you want somebody that's going to be able to, work databases and this, that, and the other, you might not want to go in that direction. Well, I ended up getting that job. And it took me forever to really learn what the heck I was doing. Probably a good year. And had some struggles along the way. And so Colonel Carr went to Scotty Algren and said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, do we really want Coop here?" And I had a good relationship with Colonel Carr. Do we need to move him someplace? And Scott's like, "I got this. I'll take care of it." So Scott Algren, I had a great first sergeant when I went back to the Bravo Battery. Steve Barner, Colonel Barner, Colonel Gullett. Great mentors when we were young captains. General Stone, General Terrell, and Major General Estrada later in life. I guess the biggest thing is that, having those relationships and staying true again to your colors, having humility, being able to admit that you're not the smartest guy in the room, gaining respect is from the people that you're working with, and knowing that, you support them and that you care about what it is that they're doing is important and contributed to all my successes. Of course, first and foremost, it's God. I mean, the turning point was when I was struggling with the 119th. That's another thing, I mean, I opened up the Bible and it was 2 Corinthians 12:10 or 12:7 through 12:10. Basically, you don't want to build yourself with conceit and identify your successes as yours and completely yours. You know what I mean? Otherwise, God's going to put a thorn in your side until you basically scream uncle and identify and give him the glory for your successes, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because you can't do it by yourself. And the moment you think that it's all you, I feel sorry for you. So, Ed Groom, my first sergeant, What a guy. I'll tell you. He was also a huge influence on me. But and then of course my wife and my boys, Logan and Garrett, and my external family, my sister-in-law, Laura, and just my brother. They just, I'm very blessed to be able to have as many people that I could turn to, because there's a lot of people out there that don't have even maybe one that they can really dump on sometimes when they're having a bad day. So I feel very blessed. I feel grateful for this opportunity to share my story. And whoever's listening out there, there's got to be a takeaway in there someplace. I can't believe that I'm the only one that, grew up on welfare, high school dropout that has made their way in life because of God's glory, So that's pretty much it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.